Hello, everyone. Took me a while to get going. Gordon Causey coming live and scripted with the results of the St. Paul's riding by-election taking place tonight, Monday, June 24th in Toronto. Candy the Wonder Pup is right here. Kind of a dual night in Canada. We have the Stanley Cup final taking place between Edmonton Oilers and the Florida Panthers. That game right now, it's 2-1 in favor of Florida with one period of play left to go. They've completed the second period. They're in intermission. Most people probably know that. And the other thing that Canadians are fixating on, in all likelihood, is what's happening in St. Paul's. And right now, I'll give you the results, but first I got to take care of Candy. If you're new to this channel, and I might get some new viewers tonight, people hungry for election coverage and wanting the opinion of just Joe at ordinary average, Gordon Causey, southeastern Ontario, little town called Brighton, outside of the GTA to the east, about an hour away from Toronto, 100 kilometers or so. Here, let me get like treat out of my pocket. There we go. Lay down, speak, come up, show your stripe. There we go. That's Candy the Wonder Pup. So here are the results as of right now. I'm going to explain a bit about how Canadian politics works. Right now, there are 18 out of 192 polls reporting. If you've gone to vote, you know that you go into a school. Quite often it's a school or community center, and there might be 15 or so, a dozen, 15, maybe more ballot boxes, and there'll be poll 101, 102, 103, 104, or poll 68, 69, 70. You go into your polling station, and then you go up to the returning officer or deputy returning officer. You give them your voter information card, or in lieu thereof, identification proving that you're an eligible voter, like your driver's license or passport or whatever, photo ID. And then you get your ballot, and you're told you're in poll 108. And then you go behind a little partition, you mark your X beside the candidate you want to win. And then you go to that box for your poll. If it's 108, you go to box 108 and you put it in there. And there are 192 boxes that have to be counted. And right now, as things stand, only 18 of 192 of those boxes have been opened and fully counted. And that's 9.38% of the total. I'm getting this information straight off of Elections Canada. And right now, as things stand, the Liberal candidate has 949 votes. That's 46% of the total ballots cast. The Conservative Don Stewart has 757, which is 36.7. So we have about a 9-point separation between the Liberals and Conservatives as things now stand. I'm amazed it has taken this long for the results to come in. I know there are a lot of conspiracy-minded people out there who say, oh, it's a fix. The fix is in. I would ask you to take a deep breath. I know the political process very well. Dan DeMan, 966, loves my channel. Thank you. And as I said in my video of yesterday, talking about this election, my own personal prediction was a Liberal victory of in and around 5%. In the last federal election, 2021, the Liberal candidate, the outgoing Liberal candidate, had won darn near 50% of the vote, 49 point something. So this is as safe a Liberal seat as you're going to find in the province of Ontario. Typically speaking, you've got to go back to the Mulroney era era. You have to go back to the 1980s. You have to go back to when this old 58-year-old guy was in high school, soon to be 58. I'm not 58 yet, 58 next month. The last time that the Conservatives won this seat was during the Brian Mulroney era. So after Trudeau had been Prime Minister of Canada for darn near 16 years, with one brief little interruption in around 1979 when Joe Clark formed a brief minority government that was defeated. But so things haven't changed. The site, I'm going to include in the live chat the link to what I am looking at. So if anyone wants to look along with me, you can. But why is it taking so long? That's a reasonable question. You would expect if this was a federal election with 338 ridings being contested, that likely by this time of the evening, an hour after the polls have closed, actually it's coming up on 2 hours since the polls closed. And within an hour of the polls closing, typically the CTVs, globals of the world are already making a projection as to who will form the next government. This election will not determine who forms the next government. That's already a fixed quantity. The Liberals are not going to be defeated tonight. The Conservatives are not going to gain power. This is a simple one riding by-election because the riding held by the Liberals was vacated. The Liberal member resigned her seat. She's become, I believe it's the ambassador for Denmark. She's been a good, loyal party member, carried the banner, and so she's getting her reward on top of her gold-plated pension. She'll be earning hundreds of thousands of dollars, I imagine, as Canada's ambassador to Denmark. But why is it taking so long? Well, because this is just one election, that allows the Liberals, the Conservatives, the NDP, the PPC, the Green Party, all of the parties can pour much of their resources into this one specific riding. So there's manpower, certainly Liberal manpower and Conservative manpower. I think the NDP and the Greens and the PPC and the other parties realize we don't have a snowball's chance, so they're not going to overly commit too much manpower, resources at it. But what's happening right now is, I mentioned how you have these little polling districts. You'll have these schools and community centers where people have gone to cast their ballots. At 8:30, the doors closed, and then they have to open those boxes up and count them one at a time. There will be a federal employee of Elections Canada, referred to as a returning officer or a deputy returning officer. They are responsible for counting the votes. However, the Liberal candidate, Church, and the Conservative candidate, Don Stewart, they can each have a scrutineer in every poll, in every little voting center, in every community center and school, and they'll be standing there observing the count. And so as a box gets emptied and the votes are tallied, maybe someone's X will go outside of the circle for a specific candidate, and it might intersect with the circle for a different candidate. And the scrutineers then have a right to contest that ballot. And I don't know the full details of what exactly happens when ballots are contested. Usually elections are not that close. They're not going to be decided by a dozen or even a few hundred votes. Typically, the margins are fairly enough clear, and there might be, a few dozen contested ballots, but they wouldn't change the result. And so what may be happening is because there's a liberal scrutineer, a conservative scrutineer, an NDP scrutineer for the block for the Green Party, for the PPC. It could be drawing out the process right now. There's been an update. The Leslie Church is now winning 1,159 votes to 904. And that's 45.7% for the Liberals, 35.7% for the Conservatives. The NDP are down at 11.3. The Green Party is 3.8, and the People's Party as less than 0.5%. Only has 13 votes. And as things stand right now, that's 20 out of 192. So it's still way too early. There is a bit of a trend forming. There's a 10-point lead for the Liberals. As a conservative-minded Canadian, I would prefer to see I would prefer to see the Conservatives winning, but reality is what reality is. However, I don't know where these 20 polls are located. And it may very well be, a riding, I've said it before, I said it in yesterday's video, a riding is a geographic area that has about 125,000 people, 125 to 150. That's the total population. My understanding is this riding has 70,000 plus electors. That's the number of eligible voters, around 70-ish thousand, 70 to 80,000 people have the right to cast a ballot. Now, because this election, this little by-election, isn't going to change the makeup of our parliament. It's not going to see Justin Trudeau's Liberals defeated. It won't see Pierre Poilievre's Conservatives elected to government. A lot of people stay home. A lot of people say, well, this is a nothing burger. I'm not going to bother voting in this. It doesn't really have an impact. The Liberals have poured, they've had something like a dozen cabinet ministers. Trudeau's visited the riding. Chrystia Freeland has visited the riding. Singh, I can't remember the gentleman's name. He's a former minister of defense. He's visited the riding. A number of Liberal heavyweights have visited the riding, going out knocking on doors. And the Conservative, Poilievre, has visited the riding. And, it's a two-horse race. And thanks for all the comments, everyone. JCP, much love to you as well. Sharunian, no, libertarian. You're saying Gordon was libertarian until Justin Trudeau failed him. I've mentioned on this channel before, full disclosure, in 2015, I did vote, pardon me, my fellow conservative-minded Canadians, but in 2015, I did vote for the Liberal candidate in my riding. And I repented very quickly in both the 2019 and 2021 elections. I did about as full a 180 as you can do. I went all the way from having voted Liberal in 2015, and I voted PPC, People's Party of Canada, Maxime Bernier's party, in both 2019 and 2021, returned to my conservative views. Libertarian, it should be noted, should not be confused with liberal. A libertarian is someone who advocates for smaller government. A libertarian is someone who sees government as the problem and not the solution. Liberals typically, overwhelmingly, certainly Canadian Liberals, think it's government's job to solve all of Canada's problems. And I'm hearing that in spades. I was watching a little bit of CBC coverage of this by-election. It makes my stomach turn because the journalism on the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation is so pathetic. They never challenge anyone. They were talking to a Liberal cabinet minister from a neighboring riding of Mississauga, and he was talking about how, the government's there, got to solve all your problems. So, we're trying to get help to Canadians. We've made housing unaffordable, so we're trying to help Canadians. And we've made energy costs unaffordable, so we're trying to get help to Canadians. They create a huge mess, and then it's the Liberal modus operandi. What they want to do is, after creating a huge mess, like sending the cost of living through the roof, then they want to create a bureaucracy, a new government agency to help Canadians cope with the problem that the Liberal Party created. We're letting the Liberal Party, immigration under the Liberal Party has expanded to over 1 million people a year, new people entering the country. And people get accused of racism if you speak out against immigration. But the thing is, immigration is great, but at what level? How many? 1 million people? That's more than the province of Nova Scotia, for goodness sakes. It's that's like adding 5 Prince Edward Islands. 5 new provinces the size of Prince Edward Island every year, probably 6. Because PEI's population isn't even 200,000, and we are adding 1 million plus people a year. And this is Trudeau's, part of his party platform, wide open. Let's make housing unaffordable. Let's make energy unaffordable. Let's make Canadians totally dependent on the government. This is sounding like a bit of a campaign speech for the, anti-liberal, but if you want big government, if you want government making life unlivable, and then borrowing money to give you a little, take your taxes and give you a little bit of it back, and then borrow more to give you maybe a few extra pennies here and there. Although pennies don't exist in Canada. So let's look at the results, see where we are now. Update, we are now at 23 of 192, so we're up to 11.98% of the polls reporting. So there is still almost 88% of the polls still have not reported. That's 88% of those boxes that they have to open up and spill out and count all the ballots. There's still 88% of them to come. And as things stand now, it's Liberal Leslie Church with 1,479 votes. Another update. Leslie Church, 1,552. Don Stewart of the Conservatives, 1,165. So there's been a bit of a separation. The Liberals are 46.2%. The Conservatives are 34.7%. So we're getting to an 11+% lead. And the Liberals, sadly, they're getting close to what they got in the 20. Right now, as things stand right now, the Liberals are getting close to what they got in the 2021 election when they got 49 point something of the vote. They're just 4 points behind what they got in that last election. And from a Conservative standpoint, there's a good and a bad to that. The good side is that if you're a Conservative, is that Trudeau's going to be sticking around. And that bodes well in the next full federal election when all 300, it's going to be 340 odd. I think it's 343. Should have checked that. But right now, there are 338 seats in Canada's House of Commons, 170 seats needed for a majority right now. I believe they're adding 5. And I think we're going to 343 seats. And the reason Parliament is expanding is because The reason it is expanding is because the population keeps growing. And why does the population keep growing? Because, hey, you know, it's the land of milk and honey. We've got housing for everyone. We've got jobs for everyone. We've got everything for everyone. Come on in. And it's a sad state of affairs. I do believe in immigration. I think most Canadians do, but based on Canada's needs. We have an aging population. So right now it's 1,812 votes for the Liberals, 1,367 for the Conservatives, 45.4 to 34.2%. And we are sitting at 15.62%, 30 out of 192. We have 162 polls still to come. And you have these community centers, schools where the voting is taking place, and they're in different geographic locations. And it could be that this riding, St. Paul's, reported in the press, 60% of the residents of the riding are renters. People have seen their rents just going through the roof. And that's what happens, supply and demand. There's more demand for housing, for rental accommodation. So rents go up. So renters are not happy. Property owners, though, more demand for housing. Housing prices go up. Homeowners are probably happy to a degree. And just an editorial comment on my part, I think that renters would be more inclined to vote Conservative. But we don't know where the 30 polls that have reported so far, 30 out of 192, they may be in areas that are predominantly home ownership. They may be in areas of that riding where predominantly people own their own homes. We may have yet to get the results from areas where it's predominated by people who rent. Quite often, even within a riding, there are areas within a riding that will be more inclined liberal, areas that will be more inclined conservative. And we don't know. All we know is 30 out of 192. We don't know what 30 polling boxes have been opened, and they may only be from a couple polling stations, because in each polling station, if you've been to vote, there are 15, 20 boxes, there are 15, 20 tables, each with a box on them. And when we talk about 30 of 192 polls, that means 30 out of 190, there are 192 of those ballot boxes that have to be opened and counted, and they've only done 30 of them. And that could be just a couple of polling stations. The live chat is on. Thank you, everyone, for commenting. Dan DeMann, JCP, Sharunian, Gordana, Virtue Signal Side is here. All young males resent Canadian culture. I think some of that depends on where you live. Being out here in rural Ontario, where I am, I live in a very rural area. The young kids, and I work with a lot of them. No, they're very proud of their country. And they out here in my little, there's a divide. Out here in my area, this liberal woke ideology around things like transgenderism, this nonsense, it does have some traction, but nothing close to the degree to which you would see it in a riding like St. Paul's in downtown Toronto. So I got to flip back and forth, unfortunately, waiting for the next update. Still 30 out of 192. If you look at the ballot, I shared the link already in the live chat. I shared the link to to Elections Canada website. You're going to see 80 plus names, and overwhelmingly that it's independent. And we have Liberal, Conservative, NDP, Green, People's Party. Then we have someone no affiliation. We have the Rhinoceros Party, which has been around since I think the 1970s, which basically makes a joke of the electoral process. I remember the Rhinoceros Party had as part of their party platform, back when Quebec was constantly threatening to separate, their policy on national unity was super glue. They would put super glue between the provinces, and that way no province would ever be able to separate, that kind of thing. Their joke party. Marijuana Party has Daniel Legaré, and they used to be more of a force in Canadian politics. Never came close to electing a member, but they would, in some ridings, they might poll in a riding in Toronto, they might poll a few hundred, but that was back in the days before marijuana was legalized. We have a Marxist-Leninist. I mentioned yesterday these fringe parties. Marxist-Leninist is one. There's also a Communist Party of Canada. We have Ali Muhuddin with the Centrist Party. He's gotten 3 votes. And then all independents. And the reason there are so many independents is because Trudeau, after 2015, had promised Canadians that it's not the Rhinoceros. The Rhinoceros Party is actually the Rhinoceros Party. That's an American term that came out. I don't know when that started. This calling people a rhino in the U.S., which is a way of saying a fake conservative, a fake Republican in name only, someone who is a member of the Republican Party but always would vote on the side of the Democrats. The Rhinoceros Party of Canada actually predates that term and has nothing to do with it. It was a joke party. The party disbanded for a time because they actually came close to electing members, and they actually didn't want to elect anybody. They didn't want anyone in Ottawa as a rhino member of parliament. So when they got close to electing a member here and there, then they disbanded the party. So reading what Virtue Signal side says, okay, you can do some reading up on it. They were around all the way back in the 70s. And anyway, get me back on track. I cannot believe that here we are. It's more than 2 hours, 2 hours and 15 minutes. The polls closed at, I think it was 8:30 p.m. The polls closed, and we still have only, it's 33 of 192 now. And it's 1,918 to 1,479 Liberals, Conservatives. Conservatives are trailing 45% to 34.7. So just over a 10-point lead. And the spin that's going to come out of this from the Liberals, if they win, I was predicting a 5% win, and that could still happen. And the Conservatives could still come storming back. We don't know. I don't know. These 33 out of 192, we still haven't even got 20% of the votes. And it might, like I say, it might only be 2 or 3 polling locations that have reported. And Elections Canada doesn't tell you where those polling stations are. They may be in the most affluent, wealthy parts of that riding where most people own their homes and are thrilled with, having pretty much wide open immigration and driving up real estate values and making life unaffordable for those who pay rent. Some people think that's a great idea. Renters tend to think less, but again, I'm merely speculating at this point because we don't know where those boxes are. I'm going to look at the NHL score, see what's happening. There's 5 minutes and 10 seconds left in the third period, Edmonton against Florida, and it's still 2-1. And the Edmonton has put 21 shots on net, and Florida has put 20. So the shots on net is about even. And this will be a double loss for Canadians if the Liberals win and the Florida Panthers win. If the Panthers win the Stanley Cup, a great night for Canada would be Edmonton winning the Stanley Cup and the Conservatives winning this riding, or at least coming very close. The closer, the better. I'm going to... Virtue Signal side says, I'm sure the Dominion machine will finish rallying as we sleep, tallying. They don't use Dominion voting machines in Canadian federal elections. It's a piece of paper. And because there are 88 candidates on this, 84, I wrote it down over here, 84 candidates, the ballot's like 6 feet long. I thought it was maybe a folded version, but I've read reporting that it's a 2 meter, darn near a 2 meter long ballot. And the reason that was done is Trudeau had promised to eliminate this idea of first past the post voting in 2015. He promised proportional or ranked ballots or electoral reform. Because right now, as things stand, the Liberals only got 33%. They didn't even get 33 in 2021. In the most recent federal election, they got less than 33% of the ballot, but they got somewhere around 40% of the seats in the House of Commons. How is that? Well, it's because we have first past the post voting. You only have to win by, it doesn't matter if you get 40% of the vote, 60% of the people in a riding voted against your candidate, but your candidate got the most, so your candidate wins the seat and gets to go to Ottawa. No matter whether you win by 10 votes, 100, 1,000, or 10,000, a win is a win is a win is a win. So there are no Dominion voting machines used in Canada. It's a system not too divergent from what was used at the time of Confederation. A paper ballot, mark an X, put it in a box, and then it is counted by hand. And I would hate to see that ever change. And I think Canadians should get up in arms if Elections Canada ever tried to change that system, because this system works so damn well. We just have to look at the United States, where in Canada, we're able to count those ballots very quickly. It does not take long. And then we see what happened in the United States, especially in 2020, where it takes them all night and into the next day before they can make a call on the election. And the mail-in ballots, which were a joke. Who's counting them, though, is a question that Virtue Signal side asks. Okay, how are the ballots counted? You have a community center, you have a school, a little gymnasium, and there are 15 polling stations. Polling station 80 to 85. So there's a box marked 80, 81, 82, 83. We'll say it goes all the way to 95. There are 15 boxes. And you live on Main Street, at 28 Main Street in this riding. You go with your voter card, and they look up your name, and they say, okay, you are in polling district number 80. So you go and you put your ballot in the box marked 80. They give you your ballot. Next to that box, there's a little partition. You go behind the box, you mark your ballot, you put your X beside your preferred candidate. Then you go and you drop it in your specific, for your address. You mark your ballot and you put it in the box. And then that goes on. People are coming in. They're getting checked off the voter list, and then they go and they put their votes in whichever box And then in this election at 8:30 p.m., what happens is the doors close, and then who's counting it? They have a returning officer and a deputy returning officer. These are supposed to be nonpartisan individuals who work for Elections Canada, and their job is strictly to count the votes. Whatever they are is what they are. And they dump out the box and they start going through, and they'll read through, and as they come to an election, they'll say 1 vote, Leslie Church, 1 vote, Don Stewart, 2 vote, a vote, Don Stewart. And they'll have a little tally sheet and they'll be marking it. And meanwhile, while this counting is taking place, the Liberal, Conservative, NDP, all the candidates have the right to have an individual there as a scrutineer. They'll have an Elections Canada little sticker on their shirt. It'll say scrutineer, the candidate's name that they're scrutineering for. It's black and white, no partisan colors. And they can observe the count. And they have the right to object if they see a ballot that they think is improperly marked. If the Conservative looks and sees that someone's marked Leslie Church, the Liberal candidate, but their X goes far too big and it hits into the circles of other candidates, and if the deputy returning officer is saying we're going to count this as a vote for the Liberals, the Conservative can say, I object to that vote. I'd like to launch it. I'd like to register an objection to that vote. That vote will still be counted as a Liberal vote, but it'll be set aside as a questionable ballot. And there's a process that they have to go through. And at the end of the night, if it's a close election, if it's a few hundred or 1,000 or 2 votes, they may actually have to go. There's a certain percentage. And Sheriff of YouTube has just jumped on. He wants to know who won. We don't know yet, although it's looking like the Liberals. We have 22.92, 23% of the polls are reporting. And that's 44 out of 192. And as things stand right now, it is 44.6% of the vote for the Liberal, 35.7% of the vote for the Conservative. The NDP has 13.2, the Green 3.1, People's Party 0.6. And then you have a bunch of people with 9, 8, 7, 6, a bunch of people with 5, 4, 3. There are 88 people on this ballot. An organization wanting to protest the fact that Trudeau broke his promise to end first past the post voting and introduce electoral reform. They decided, okay, we're going to nominate 80 plus. We're going to nominate 80 people. And we're going to make the ballot massive because Trudeau broke his promise. And so an individual, I can sign the nomination papers if you want to be a candidate in a riding for either as an independent or as a Liberal, Conservative, NDP, whatever. You have to have you have to have people within the riding signing nomination papers. You have to have so many signatures. You have to have a certain number of signatures, a few hundred, I would think. And so what they did is, but you can sign for more than one candidate. So they have a group that signed for 80 plus candidates. So we have a ballot that has 84 people on it. So they're actually, 6 or 7 of them are legitimate political candidates with registered parties. The rest, 70 plus, probably 77 odd, are just stuffing the ballot to make it look ridiculous. Yeah, we are. Sheriff of YouTube says, yeah, not 500 apart, not 5,000. There's 2497 votes for the Liberals, 2024 for the Conservatives. So we're looking at right now about a 500 vote difference. And I just can't believe Sheriff says we should have put you or the ballot with the stuffers. Anyway, while we're waiting for the results and the end of the hockey game, which I'll check now again too, 3:18 remaining. Florida has won the Stanley Cup 2-1. The Panthers face 21. Their goalie Skinner. No. The Edmonton goalie Skinner faced 21 shots, and the Panthers goalie faced 25. So the Oil outshot the Florida Panthers, but they lost 2-1. The Stanley Cup is not coming home to Canada. So there's 1 out of 2 bad news. I'm not making a call. I'm not making a prediction on this election. I'm not at this point. It's looking like the Liberals, but again, because I know the political process, I mean, right now we're up to 23.44%. So still over 75% of the ballots, of the ballot boxes, have not been opened yet, have not been counted, have not been reported on. We got 45 out of 192. That's 23.44%. And actually, we have, I said there were 70,000 people registered to vote. Nope, it was 85, almost 85,000. 85,000 registered voters. And right now, they've got 5,615 votes have been tabulated. And it just went up. We're now 50 of 192. 6,116 ballots have been counted. And there's still almost 75% of the ballot boxes have to be opened. It's 44.2 for the Liberals, 35.6. In the last federal election, this riding of St. Paul's was won by the Liberals by 49%. So they've gone, even if these results hold, the Liberals will have gone down 4 or 5%. Contrast that with the riding of Durham, which had an election within the last year when Aaron O'Toole resigned and vacated his seat, and the Liberals, or rather the Conservatives, their vote total actually went up. They got up to close to 60% of the vote in that riding, which is a very safe conservative riding. The riding of Durham in Ontario is probably as safe for the Conservatives as this St. Paul riding is for the Liberals. But the Conservatives went up in Durham riding. The Liberals, even if things hold, will have gone down. They're at 44.2, so they'd be down 4 or 5% from the last election. While I have people watching, if you like my miserable, pathetic channel, no production values, just an ordinary average guy, Canadian born and bred, although as regular viewers know, I did spend 10 years of my youth growing up in the United States. When I was 6 months old, give or take, moved from Crystal Beach area, Welland, to New York City. And then later made our way over to New Jersey and Portland, Oregon. And I spent close to 10 years growing up in the United States. But I am Canadian. My parents are both Canadian born, and 3 of my 4 grandparents were born Canadian born. One grandfather on my mother's side is from Scotland. But, English, Irish, Scottish, Welsh is my background. Not that it matters. But just a very soon to be 58-year-old guy living out in rural Eastern Ontario. I put out my videos. Often my views would be deemed unacceptable and fringe by our soon to be departed Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, not soon enough. And if you like this channel and appreciate just genuine commentary, off the cuff, live and unscripted, you're welcome to hit the subscribe button, hit the bell, all that stuff. I've already gotten 12 likes in this video, so thank you. Let's go back to the results. Take a look. 2,703 to 2,178, 44.2 to 35.6, and 50 out of 192 polls reporting. Once it gets to 50%, I think it's fair to say there will be, I cannot get over the fact that now we're 2.5 hours since the polls closed, and we still don't have a definitive result. I don't know if CBC is calling it, if CTV or Global is calling it. I imagine now I have 11 people watching. Thank you. Hope you're enjoying political navel gazing, trying to decide, what's going to happen in this riding in downtown Toronto. The screen just updated, but no, the numbers haven't changed. 2,700 votes, 2,700 odd votes for the Liberals, nearly 2,200 for the Conservatives. So there's about a 500 vote margin. And if you have any questions, if you have any comments, please fill the live chat. I got Sheriff of YouTube, Virtue Signal Side, Dan Dumman, JCP, Sharunian, Gordana Salkovich, and anyone else watching, Gerald Sumner. Oh, Gerald Sumner, haven't seen you for a bit. Peace and love. That seems to be your go-to. Sad to see the Edmonton Oilers losing. Still, it's been 1992-99, the 92-93 season when the Montreal Canadiens defeated the LA Kings. It's the last time a Canadian team won the Stanley Cup. Sheriff says, I wonder if Drake voted for Trudeau's girl. I don't know if that's his riding. I know Drake's a Toronto guy, not a Drake fan. I prefer, I live out in the sticks, so my musical tastes tilt more toward country western, and here's my stereo. A little background music. UCB Canada, Christian Broadcasting. I love gospel music. Is it any surprise that I'm a conservative-leaning Canadian? I wish I cannot get over. I was going to start this stream. At 9:30. I figured by then the results would be in. And it's unbelievable how long it is taking. I may just, I'm going to go for another 10 minutes and then I'm going to sign off. Tell you a little joke. I was at work the other day and I was singing the song, many will know it. Neil Diamond wrote it. The Monkees performed it, made it famous. That song, I'm a Believer. It's one of those songs you get it stuck in your head. I'm a believer. So I'm singing away at work. And this lady came up to me and she told me to be quiet. I thought she was kidding, but then I saw her face. A little humor. Let's see if we got another update. Looks like we have 52. So another couple boxes have been counted. 52 of 192, just over 27% of the boxes. That's when you look at it on the site and when you see it reported, they'll say 52 of 192 polls reporting. A poll is a box. That box that you put your ballot in. That is a poll. So 52 of the 192 boxes have been opened and counted. And it's 28, pretty much 2,800 for the Liberals to 2,261 for the Conservatives. So it's 44.2% for the Liberals, 35.7% for the Conservatives. Hopefully, I was predicting before this election took place yesterday, I was predicting the Liberals would win by 4, 5, 6%, right in and around 5%. That was my prediction. And part of the rationale for that is that it's long been said by people who are much smarter than I, that Canadians, that we don't elect governments, we kick governments out. It wasn't that we were thrilled with this new guy, Trudeau. We were tired of Harper. We weren't thrilled with Jean Chrétien. We were just tired of the Mulroney years. We don't elect governments, we kick governments out. And Trudeau was so massively unpopular, I thought that there would be that conservative-minded voters would be more motivated to get out to the polls. And that because it does take time. You got to get your voter card or your ID. You got to go down to the school or the community center. You have to quite often stand in line. It takes some time. And in today's world, a lot of people, I can't be bothered. I want to watch my Netflix. I want to watch the Stanley Cup. I got to get my shopping done. I got to get this done. I got to get that done. I can't be bothered. And because the by-election doesn't change anything, I mean, right now, as things stand in the House of Commons, the Liberals have 155 seats, 155, and the Conservatives have 118. And if the results hold, well, the Liberals will go from 155 to 156. It doesn't have any real tangible impact. It has no impact whatsoever on the manner in which this country is being governed. If the result had been if the Conservatives had won, and if they can still manage it, although it's looking as each poll comes in, this margin is holding. But if the Conservatives had won, I could have seen a groundswell within the Liberal Party itself to get rid of Trudeau. That people, his members of Parliament, his Liberal caucus, would have said, "Gosh, we couldn't even win in St. Paul's. We've held that riding since we haven't lost it since Mulroney was Prime Minister. You got to go," and would have pushed for Trudeau to leave and revolted on him. They have no real constitution. The Liberal Party constitution doesn't have a mechanism by which the members can remove. They don't have a leadership review. They can't force Trudeau out. But what they can do is they could have an open revolt and say, trash him in the press, and it's a bad scenario. It's a bad scenario when a leader tries to hang on when he loses the support around the caucus table, and it usually doesn't happen. Got a mosquito in the house, and I can't catch it. Mosquitoes are slow. All right, let's take a look. Oh, we got some more polls in. 55 of 192, so we're at 28.65%. And The gap is narrowing. It's 29.37 to 24.94. So the Liberals now are down to 43.3, and the Conservatives are up to 36.8. So we're getting into a 6-7% lead. And as I say, it could be a reflection of the fact that 60% of the residents living in this riding of St. Paul's, 60% of the people living there are renters. And Trudeau's governing policies of wide open immigration and raising the cost of living of everything with his carbon tax, that's going to impact renters far more than it will property owners. And so if there are parts of that riding that are predominantly rental accommodation, and if those are some of the boxes, some of the polls that have not been counted yet, well, then we could see the Conservatives move up. And that's what I can hope for. And again, I'm going to go a few more minutes. Man, I would love to see this tighten up even more. I mean, there's only, let me do some back of the napkin. I haven't got a calculator on me. 29.37, 494, 3. Yeah, we're 443 as things stand. As of the most recent updates, there's only 443 votes separating the Conservative and the Liberal. Only 443 votes. So, and we'll see what happens when the next polls come in. I would have expected a flood of them by now. I mean, I don't understand why. It does not take this long to tip open a box and count the ballots. Mind you, in each polling station, there's 10 to 15 boxes. There might be a dozen or so different polling stations, schools, community centers, different locations that people have to go to vote. Typically, it's very close. It'll be the school closest to you. It'll be the rec center, whatever. So you go to that place, and typically there are 10 to 15 polls, and as they count them one at a time. They'll have a returning officer and a deputy returning officer. The party candidates can have their scrutineers standing back and observing and making any objections, contesting any ballots as things go along. And I have been a scrutineer. I've been a scrutineer for the Conservatives, for the Liberals, for the NDP. I'm a political junkie for the PPC. I've been a scrutineer. And some scrutineers can be jerks. A lot of times you're dealing with political neophytes who are ideologically, unless my candidate wins, Canada is going to be destroyed. And so they want to contest everything. When I've been a scrutineer, and it doesn't matter what party I've been a scrutineer for, I know enough about the political process that I'll sit there and I'm that voice of saying, let's just take this chill. The deputy returning officer and the returning officer, they know what to do. We don't need to be hyper concerned. If the intention is clear, 99% of the time, it's 100% clear who a person intended to vote for. Maybe I've seen guys complain, well, that X went outside of the circle. So what? It went like a millimeter outside of the circle. It's clear who the person was intending to vote for, whether it's my candidate or not, whether it's the party I support or not. The integrity of an election is based on people's voting intentions being recognized, whether you agree with them or not. But I have seen individuals as scrutineers, and pardon the slightly profane term, but I've seen dicks and Karen types Pardon that. So let's see if we've had any more updates. Yep, more updates. We are now at 56 of 192, so we're almost at 30%. And it's 3,002 to 529. I should. 3,002 to 2,529. So it's a 573 vote. So it went from 443 as of the previous update. Now it's a 573, the margin. No, it can't be. No, 473. Less than 500 votes separate. 43.4% for the Liberals, 36.5% for the Conservatives, in a riding that the Liberals have not lost. Got to go all the way back to Brian Mulroney. 22 people are watching my channel right now. Unbelievable. If you like it, hey, I've got 17 already. If you want to subscribe, this is a miserable, pathetic, no ads. Just Gordon Causey, a guy in southeastern Ontario, little town of Brighton, middle of nowhere, Canadian veteran, left the military back in June of 2021. Now I work at a local establishment. And Sheriff of YouTube has a comment. Also say you are. No, I'm not saying I'm a commando. that has two connotations, and TMI comes immediately to mind on one of the connotations. And secondly, when I was in the forces, I was in communications. I have no compunction in telling you when it comes to the firearms, when it came to the rifle range, I was about as bad a shot as you could find. I was the guy at the end who still hadn't his grouping. I always had a stray bullet. You would have groupings of 5, and I forget the distance. They you had to be within a grouping, and my groupings were always 4 of the 5 would typically be good, but I'd always have one stray. I was not good with the rifle. I know how to operate it, but my aim. Sheriff of YouTube says I can do the knife. I was in communications, signals, SIGOP, and I said it last time. ASIS, Army Communication Information System Specialist. That was the acronym. You always got to give everyone a fancy title. ASIS. I was a RADOP. I operated the radio. In the last 6 years, I spent working in a radar station, updating flight itineraries, and doing a lot of paper shuffling and talking on the radio with pilots. Also worked with a field ambulance unit. That was better. I enjoyed that. Going out with the medics on exercises and things like that. Oh, still waiting on the next update. Still at 29.17% of the polls reporting 3,002 for the Liberals, 2,529 for the Conservatives, less than 500 votes separating the two. The Oilers lost. Hopefully the Conservatives can win. I would be happy if they could just pull it in and around the 5% mark. If they do that, it sends a shot across the good ship Liberal, if you want to call it the good ship Liberal. Okay, we've got an update. It's getting tighter. Liberals are now leading with 3,115. The Conservatives are at 2,666. It's 43.1 to 36.9. So darn near 37.43. We're at about a 6-point difference. And 334 plus 115. Yeah, the vote difference is 449, so about 450 votes separate the two. The Conservatives could, it's still within the realm of possibility. As I keep saying, I'll consider it a victory if they can pull within 5, in around 5%. Anyway, Mish Christie is back. Hey, Mish, did you move around much while you were in the military? I was at Saint-Jean, sur Richelieu, Québec. Salut tous mes amis francophones. Donc, I was at Saint-Jean, Kingston, Quebec, Valcartier, and then CFB Trenton. Those were my 4 postings, but I also went to, I did exercises and training in Gagetown, in Wainwright, in Meaford, where happiness goes to die, Shiloh, Manitoba, doing winter warfare in February in Shiloh, Manitoba. Never want to see Shiloh, Manitoba again. Snow up to your hip and trying to wade around in snowshoes with 60, 70 pounds of gear on your back. Forget it. So yeah, I did move around some. I've been now in this little town of Brighton. I've been here over 10 years, 2015. No, not 10 years yet, coming up on 10 years. We moved here April of 2015. This will be the longest I've lived anywhere in my entire life. Growing up, we moved around a lot, and I've moved around a lot in my adult life. And I'm liking living in small town rural Ontario, having spent most of my life living either in or near a major city. We lived, I mentioned, I spent a lot of time living in Burlington, Ontario, Pickering, Ontario, Ajax, Ontario, which are all around the GTA. I lived in Toronto proper itself. I lived in East York, Cosburn Avenue, just off the subway line, Pape and Danforth. Very highly populated area. I lived in a part of East York called Overlea, or near Overlea. I was on a street called Thorncliffe Park Drive for a few years, where the entire population of Thorncliffe Park Drive, with it's got to be 15, 20 or more high-rise 25, 30, 40, 50-story monstrous apartment buildings. The entire population of Thorncliffe Park Drive likely surpasses the entire population of the town I live in now. Then, of course, New York, as a kid growing up in New York City, New Jersey is just outside New York City. We're half an hour away from the Lincoln and Holland tunnels, from the George Washington Bridge. Within half an hour, if traffic was good, you could be downtown Manhattan. Lived in Portland, Oregon. And so always been in and around, very close in the suburbs or in the big city. It's in a big city itself. And I like living in a rural, small area. Mish Christie lived in the Qs, the PMQs, private military quarters, in London. Yeah, I never got out to London, but it depends what trade you are. Different trades have, different trades have different bases that you go to. Like if you're a mechanic, you're going to go to Borden to do training, and a lot of people there live in Angus. Although I've heard people say that the Angus, but the G is silent. Let's see if there's been an update, and there has been. 60 out of 192. So we're now at over 30% of the polls reporting. This is unreal. I cannot believe it is taking this long. Why is beyond me. but it's 43.1% to 37.1, Liberals leading. So they've got a six percentage point lead, 3,217 to 2,772. So we're still looking at, less than 500 votes. And there are still a boatload of there's still 132 boxes that have to be opened. And I'm going to end my stream. All right. I appreciate everyone coming on. I may come back on in a half hour or so tonight and talk about the results, but I want to check out the news right now. And I'm one of these guys, I don't have television. And I was talking about the fact that I, watched before going live tonight, I was watching CBC coverage, and it turns my stomach because CBC might as well just be advertising for the Liberal Party of Canada. They do not take them to task. They do not challenge them. They do not ask any questions at all. They just let them spout their garbage. And they don't offer any balance whatsoever. And to a degree, that makes sense, because a major rallying cry of conservative Canadians is defund the CBC. We do not need $1 billion plus. It's got to be $2 billion a year that Canadians spend subsidizing both the CBC and the legacy media, the global CTVs and Bell Medias and everyone else. And there's no need for that in this country. But we are living in dangerous times. We are living in Orwellian dystopian times where Big Brother is always watching. We have these bills, C-13, C-16, where the Trudeau Liberals are clamping down on free speech, where they won't allow Canadians to share news articles on social media platforms anymore. They want you to go directly to the source. They don't want it filtered. I used to share articles and say, look at this garbage that the CBC is reporting. Why didn't they ask this question, that question? Why? Because they're pushing an agenda, because they're misrepresenting the facts. We've seen CBC lie repeatedly. During the COVID era in Edmonton, they had on the backdrop, the screen, the green screen or whatever it is in behind, they showed a patient in ICU hooked up to a ventilator. And it's only because there were eagle-eyed viewers of the news who recognized, hey, that's not a patient, that's a mannequin. And they complained. And then the director of CBC News in Edmonton was forced to apologize. He said, we made a mistake. It was an error in judgment. And that's a lie. It was not a mistake or an error in judgment unless the guy never took Journalistic Ethics 101. It's okay to put an image of a mannequin on a hooked up to a ventilator on your backdrop, so long as you disclose it. The following image that we are displaying depicts a mannequin on a hooked up to a ventilator in an intensive care unit. We're showing this image to show Canadians what a patient in an ICU would look like. However, this image that we are showing you is a mannequin. If they do that, it's ethical, it's above board, Bob's your uncle, good to go. But they didn't do that. It was propaganda. And CBC engages regularly in propaganda. And when I watch the news coverage of this by-election, it's a liberal advertising spot. They're promoting the Liberal Party of Canada, but the Liberal Party of Canada props them up. It's what gives them a job. They look at, you don't bite the hand that feeds, and the Liberals are going to keep pumping money into the CBC, whereas the Conservatives are making overtures that they will defund the CBC, that it may even be wiped out. Imagine that, the world without CBC. Oh, what a wonderful world without the CBC, without the government having a propaganda arm. Remember the reporting from the convoy where they lied to Canadians repeatedly, but they presented it as fact that the convoy is being funded by foreign interests. Well, that was a lie. And they said, there's a bunch of racist symbols. What, you plant some guy with a Confederate flag and that suddenly represents everyone? The lies that went on during that convoy, Ottawa residents are being terrorized. Yeah, because you're telling them to be terrorized. You told them to be terrorized of a little viral bug going around. You could do that every flu season. Anyway. More of a nail biter than the hockey game. This is Miss Christie's comment. I didn't watch the hockey game. I didn't watch it. I know the score. I know that Edmonton lost 2-1, but I don't know. That third period. I'm assuming Edmonton must have pulled the goalie, and tried to get that equalizer. I'm sure it was close. Let's see where we are. 3,540. We are at 33.85. So just over a third of the ballot boxes have been counted. The Liberals have 3,500 votes, 3,540. The Conservatives have 3,046. So once again, it's just under 500 votes is the difference. The Liberals are at 43.3, the Conservatives 37.3. So it's coming in close. I said I was predicting a 5-point that the Liberals would win by roughly 5%, by a 5-point margin. And right now it's a 6-point margin, but only a third, 33.85. Only a third of the ballot boxes have been opened and counted, which is unreal. So I'm going to sign out. Thank you very much, everyone who's watched. Sorry, the results. It is what it is. I can't. I'm going to check out some of the coverage going on to see why it's taking so long. We're now 3 hours. It does not take 3 hours to open up 192 boxes and count the ballots. Each box, 40, 50 votes, maybe 100. It's not a huge number of votes, and it's very quick. And with 84 candidates, okay, and it looks like there are some candidates who have 0 votes. Looks like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So it looks like there's a dozen or so candidates who've gotten no votes, a dozen or so have gotten 1 vote. And then, 40 or so candidates who've gotten, 10 votes or less. I'll give you the full results and then I'll sign off. These are not the results. These are just where things stand now. 3,715 for the Conservative, or for the Liberals, 3,715, 3,191 for the Conservative, NDP 1,083, Green Party 265, an independent candidate by the name of Mario Stocco has 73 votes. The People's Party has 61. So it's a 2-horse race. It's a 2-horse race. 3,191 to 3,715. Liberals have 43.1. Conservatives 37. So I'm going to keep an eye. And we're now at 35, just over 35% of the boxes have been opened. Now it's 36.98, so there'll be an update. Let's take a look. 3,882 to 3,335. So we got about this 500-ish vote difference, 43.1% of the vote for the Liberals, 37 for the Conservatives, 6.1% is the margin. Anyway, thank you for watching. And again, as always, thank you for all the likes, 21. Wow. And if you want to subscribe and you want a Fringe Canadians' unacceptable views on the issues of the day, you're most welcome. I always enjoy engagement. The comment field down below, fill it up. I try to respond to most, and we'll see what happens. You can, if the Conservatives do manage to pull this one out, it would be a big, there'd have to be a big surge, not massive, but there would have to be a surge in Conservative votes. If that happens, you can bet I'm going to come back on live and give a quick update. Anyway, God bless. Thank you for watching. And Miss Christie, Sheriff, Gerald Sumner, Virtue Signal Side, Sharunian, JCP, Dan DeMan, everyone. If I missed anyone, JCP, if I missed anyone, thank you for all the comments. You know I always enjoy the engagement, and we will talk to you soon. God bless again.